I'm Don. Today we have another Warhammer commission. I finished the base of this Heldrake already and I have a separate video. I'll put the link below. This video has a ton of fails, like not really major fails, but at the latter part of the video I kinda switched the process. It was a pain to paint this model, and watch as I push through finishing this model. I'm Don, welcome to my studio. This channel is supported by all these awesome brands. Also, this channel won't be possible without the support of my patrons. We start the painting by using a burnt umber underpainting for the gold trims. I usually do this for regular like miniatures, but for this one, it felt like it did not really affect or help the painting of the gold trims. It was not really easy to paint the burnt umber over the gold trims, but it was a bit more relaxing than actual gold paint because it's okay to like overpaint over other areas because it's just dark brown. This burnt umber underpainting works super fine with regular miniatures because the hard to reach areas and the crevices, you could actually leave like burnt umber instead of trying to paint it with gold paint. Also, the Hyro paint that I'm using here, it's a local paint brand, has very good coverage, similar to this game color. This game color, or basically game colors in general, has very good coverage. So I like painting this over black primer so that I could layer up with my cuttlefish later. At this point of the painting of this model, I would recommend that you paint this model in sub-assemblies. Like, it was so difficult reaching the hard to reach areas and the crevices and even the skin parts. Thank God this skin color has like very good coverage, so I don't really have to paint it twice to have a really nice solid color. Now we paint the gold trims, and there's a ton, hoping that the burnt umber underpainting will help with the coverage. I'm using this Citadel Retributor armor as requested by the client, but I must say that this is one or even the best gold paint, acrylic gold paint that I have ever used. The coverage of Retributor armor is unmatched in comparison to other gold paints, but you still have to apply it in 2 thin coats so that you have a solid coverage. Although I'm using the best gold paint here, honestly, I give up. The trims are actually easy to paint because they're kind of big. They're not as small as some trims, and you could simply paint it sideways, like place your brush sideways and apply very little pressure. But as you can see, there's a ton more areas to paint and I simply give up. So basically I spent the whole afternoon and I was only able to paint the other half of the model. So now I had to dig deep, really deep, and like switch the painting process. Here you see me, I plan to do a reverse wash, which is like a technique for gunpla. And I'm painting the whole thing gold and a solid gold. The problem here is that this is somewhat another fail. I'm not really used to airbrushing Citadel paints. So you could see in the video, I'm applying the Citadel gold, the Retributor armor, thinned down with water, in very thin coats, because I think I kinda over thinned the paint. So after a thin coat of Retributor armor, I again give up. So I'm using this Vallejo Mecha color because I'm so used to using these paints, and it's a matter of mixing the copper and the gold paint so that I kinda copy the color or the tone of Retributor armor. Basically, I'm using my daughter's Infinity airbrush, which is a point 0.4, is like like point 0.4 needle, and like the pressure is roughly around 20 psi. I thin down the Mecha Color metallic paint roughly around 3 parts paint and 1 part water. If you're painting a lot more models, you should apply or you should put a small amount of flow improver. Now, before we do the reverse wash, we need to apply gloss varnish. I usually get this like inquiries about varnishes. Basically, poly varnishes are very like durable and they're easier to airbrush. However, I find that the Mecha varnish, it's just me, I feel that the Mecha varnish is more durable, although you have to thin this down roughly around 2 parts varnish and 1 part water. You could also get away with simply 1:1. Now I'm using Mecha varnish here, but again, going back to the polyurethane varnish, it's basically easier to airbrush because you don't really have to thin it too much, especially if you're using like a bigger size needle or nozzle. I'm using a 0.4 here at around 20 psi. I applied it in 2 thin coats, making sure that I let dry in between coats. Now you should let this cure at a minimum of 4 hours, but overnight curing is better. Now we go back before we do the reverse wash, we go back to painting the skin, which actually I feel saved this project because you all know I love painting skin. So here I'm using my cuttlefish colors and basically layering up as I paint towards the highlights. I go straight to cuttlefish colors here because I don't need the coverage of the game color. So it's all cuttlefish colors, scar tissue, and then raw skin, and then rosy skin, and then some colonial white highlights to finish off the skin painting. So although I recommend all of the cuttlefish colors, I highly recommend the skin set. The skin set is simply a must-have. So even though you don't do glazes, the cuttlefish color skin set will give you very nice transitions as you use it for layering. Now we paint the gunmetal parts. Basically at the middle part of painting with this color, I kinda switched to my speed paint. I forgot the color, but I use speed paint 2.0 for the painting of the other metal parts or silver gunmetal parts. After painting the silver or gunmetal and of course the skin, we now move on to the reverse wash. I'm using this Cobra oil water mixable oil color, which is kinda weird but it works. You could see here that I'm adding water and it actually dissolves in water. It takes a little bit of effort to create a wash because you really have to mix it well so that it dissolves in water. But it's super weird. This is still oil paints and it's perfect. At least for me, it's perfect for this purpose. The classic reverse wash technique in Gunpla basically uses enamel washes from Tamiya because it was like an age-old technique, and then you remove it with mineral spirits. With this one, because we're not using enamel or even traditional like regular oil paints, we just need water. So you simply need like let the oil fat wash to dry, and then you could clean up with water. You could see me here kinda, I did not record like the initial cleanup because it was too dirty. With this one, I'm just doing like final cleanups, removing some black washes on the gold parts. This technique is very messy and I use a piece of cloth to initially clean the black wash, and then eventually I move to like using a Q-tip to clean up the remaining black wash. Now it's time for our tip time. Now before I reveal, a ton of thanks to all my patrons because without my patrons, this channel won't be possible. So you saw in this video, I kinda switched the painting process, like from the usual regular painting of the trims and then eventually switched to the reverse wash, which was so much faster. Although I must say that it's very messy, especially during the clean off or clean up of the black wash. Now, for some odd reason, the burnt umber underpainting for the gold trim did not really help as much, or it felt like it did not help with the coverage of the retributor armor. I think the burnt umber underpainting only kinda works with actual regular miniatures wherein there are like very hard to reach areas, especially the undersides of the model. And then with this one, because all of the trims here is very much visible, it kinda like did not really help. So I still had to paint 2 thin coats of retributor armor to get a solid coverage. And it took me like the whole afternoon just to paint half of the model. You could actually just soldier on and paint the trims via the traditional manner and just paint it with the retributor armor in a regular manner. However, it will take you maybe a couple of days or even more because there are a ton of trims. Thus, obviously, I gave up and then switched to the reverse wash. The most important part of the reverse wash is the airbrushing or the painting of the gloss varnish. Without the gloss varnish, it will be so difficult to clean up the black wash. Another thing is to let the gloss varnish cure. You need to let it cure for at least 4 hours. Overnight is better, and of course, 24 hours of curing is much better. Polyurethane gloss varnish and of course mecha gloss varnish are both good. The main difference is that the poly varnish is easier to airbrush. You could actually use a 0.5 needle and you don't have to thin that varnish. Although I feel that the mecha gloss varnish is a little bit more durable. Now once the varnish is cured, again at least 4 hours, you could use enamel or regular oil paints or like you saw here, the water mixable oil paint. That's it, Pansit. I hope you liked the video and watch these other videos.